Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. Your host JP John Poz with me today, very special guest, sports writer covering the New York Giants, a journalist as well, Mr. Doug Rush. Doug, welcome in. How you doing?
Oh, John, this is such surreal because I told you 10 years ago I used to do a podcast with your brother, with your twin brother Jay, and now here I am, almost 10 years later. I'm doing your podcast, so it's pretty cool to do this. So I'm honored and great to be on your show.
Awesome. That is pretty cool, pretty amazing. What's going on in your world? What are you up to? I know the Giants obviously are rocking and rolling right now.
Oh, I mean, the Giants are getting ready for, the start of the regular season. They got the joint practices with the Jets for their final, the final tune-up for the regular season. And then it'll be, we're getting down to cut down day. And, football season's right around the corner, and it's closer than everyone realizes. So, football's almost upon us. And, yeah. Before we know it, the games. We're talking about preseason, but the games really don't count. Pretty soon, the games are going to count. So football is right there, and it's always an exciting time.
What do you think about the Giants right now? Obviously, preseason you can't really tell. It's hard to judge where they're going to be or how good they're going to be. But what do you think about them for the regular season?
Um, I mean, I think a lot of it is going to be based on Daniel Jones, obviously coming back from the ACL tear. Obviously, the first time coming back, in a preseason game, you got two different. He looked not so great in the first, when he was 2 for 6, throwing two interceptions, and just kind of looked like what you saw last year. And then he kind of settled down a little bit. 9 for 12. Threw this really, threw a really good ball to Darius Slayton that almost was a touchdown. Threw a bunch of good passes to Mailk Nabers. One that was a little high, but Mailk Nabers' athletic ability could go get those. And he made a couple really good third down plays, and he actually scanned the field a couple times too. And he was known for not, looking at his first receiver and only throwing to that first receiver. So I think part of it will be also key on the offensive line. It's better, and on paper it should be better. And so far, no complaints. Of course, it only counts when you get to week one and beyond, and that first week against Minnesota. So that'll be the real test if the offensive line is actually fixed or not. So I think those are two big keys for the offense. And I think on defense, again, on paper, because you never know until you get to the regular season. On paper, the front seven, I think, is going to be a force, with the pass rush, the linebackers. It's really the secondary. And, it got exposed a little bit in Houston. I still think they might add somebody once cut downs happen, if somebody gets waived or maybe even traded. I think, though, on defense, they can keep the Giants in games. It goes back around to the offense, and if Daniel Jones can show that he can be a 40 million a year quarterback, or if the Giants have to look elsewhere after this season for the next guy to lead the team.
My whole thing looking at the team was, okay, the offensive line seems like they've corrected it. Even adding Van Rotten to the team just seems like they kind of corrected it, so to speak. But the secondary was the big worry of mine because the front seven looked good, but it felt like they didn't need another cornerback. Should have got Stephon Gilmore, I think. Was he too expensive? How come they didn't get him or land another bigger cornerback that was a free agent?
I mean, if you look at where they spent in free agency, especially with corners, they brought in Darius during free agency, and he ended up going to the Rams. And they also brought in Tre'Davious White for a meeting, and he ended up also going to the Rams too. And they were all, I mean, Tre'Davious White got about $4.5 million, and Darius Williams, I think, was signed for about 7.5. All the corners they've signed are no more than $3 million. So I think they haven't put as much value into the free agent corners. I know they want to build their own guys. I mean, they drafted Deontay Banks, they drafted Trey Hawkins, they just did Andrew Phillips. Nick McLeod was somebody they brought in and they want to develop. Trey Herndon was somebody they brought in free agency, and it wasn't for much. I don't know if they don't value the corner as much as others maybe do in free agency. I still think they might look. I think they might look for the waiver wire if somebody gets cut. They've done that a couple times. Mario Goodrich came over from the Eagles. It's whether he not makes the roster or not. is another story. But that's the kind of things they've been making, these kind of like, I don't want to say cheap moves, but more like bargain end moves for younger guys. I don't think they're looking to add a guy in their 30s, at least not for $7 million, because they seem like their investment was adding, for the pass rush, and they're still keeping Daniel Jones as their quarterback for now. But I could see them, if somebody maybe becomes available in a trade between now and maybe the cut downs, or even before the game on Saturday. I still do think they should add a corner, where there's available corners right now. Who knows? It's a matter of if somebody maybe is going to get released or doesn't make the team, and that's where Joe Shane would probably have to work the phones. But yeah, I thought Stephon Gilmore made sense early on in season, but I do see that they want to develop their own corners, because they did draft a bunch in the last couple of years, and they've added, like they haven't put as much value into the older free agents, as opposed to, draft and develop our own, as they would say. So I still think that there could be another corner that maybe gets added between now and, like I said, cut downs, and especially before week 1.
They definitely have some cap space, right? It just seems like with the restructuring Andrew Thomas' deal, it seemed like they have the cap space to pick up somebody if they wanted to.
Yes, I mean, it seems like I've heard 18 million. I think another said 13 million. They've got space to at least, if some sense think it's cap room to operate the team during the season. They have them, and right now they operate on the top 51 rules. So, the remainder guys who get cut, and then those salaries will get chopped off, and then they have salary space. So they have salary space to operate the team, but they also have salary space to make moves if needed. And you also get into the season where, like, for instance, last year when they brought back Justin Pugh, they didn't bring back Justin Pugh on a big, veteran free agent contract. He kind of got, like almost like the veteran minimum. You could possibly see something like that, if we get, week 2, week 3, week 4, if they still haven't added a veteran corner, and there's still a bunch out there. It's just a matter of if who's willing to, if they really want to play football that badly, but maybe, take a lesser deal just to kind of like prove themselves. That could be a possibility too. It's just a matter of who lines up, who fits on Shane Bowen's defense, and who's also willing to kind of take the lesser deal to come play. And it's also a matter of, like I said, it's a matter of who doesn't make somebody's football team that also could be a benefit and a fit for the Giants as well.
I'm wondering, what do you see for them this year, though? Are you seeing success? Because, you hear some people think they're a playoff team. Some people think they're going to be the worst team in the NFC East. What do you think about the Giants and their chances this year?
I think if the offensive line plays well and gives Jones a chance, I mean, I think, especially with Brian Daboll calling the plays and maybe getting a little more aggressive. And that's the thing I liked. At least he stayed aggressive, even after he got picked off twice. And the second interception, I don't hold on him as much as that first one, where he should never have thrown that ball away the way he did, falling down. The second one, he was trying to go deep to Hyatt. All right, that happens. We've seen that a million times in the NFL. You go deep, you got beat by a good corner. It happens. But even after the 2 picks, I like the fact that Daniel Jones wasn't just going back to dump offs, and was willing to go deep, and was willing to go deep to Nabers. And I think that's going to be a key. Like, if he's got the time and the protection, and he had that against Houston, he only got the 1 hurry in 19 dropbacks. If he gets the time to maybe scan the field, he can go deep to Nabers. Maybe he can go deep to Slayton or Hyatt or Wandale. And he also got Singletary, who, he's healthy and he could be a weapon too. And he's also got all these other, younger rookies, Theo Johnson, Tyrone Tracy, who's actually back in practice. Also Eric Gray, second year. He could be a factor as well. He's got these weapons. If he can stay healthy and not make bad decisions, which he was doing last year before he got hurt, he was going back to some of the things that, almost got him, kicked out of this area before 22, where he was, not making good decisions with the football. If he can make good decisions with the football, like he did in 2022 when the Giants were a playoff team, I mean, especially with a receiver like Mailk Nabers, who really opens up the offense, if he can be what we all expect him to be, the Giants have a chance. I mean, nobody thought they were going to be a playoff team in 2022, and yet they were a playoff team and they won a playoff game. So really anything can happen. I mean, nobody's expecting them to be on the same level with the Eagles or the Cowboys, but then again, they ended up finishing the regular season last year beating the Eagles. And I mean, they didn't really hang with the Cowboys last year, but they did the year before. So it's really, I mean, they're trying to build something, and if the offense can actually show that they can throw the ball and get down the field, I think that, like I said, I think the defense will keep them in games. And if the offense can score some points and move the ball down the field, and if Daniel Jones can actually be like a 3,500 to 4,000 yard quarterback, maybe 8 wins, maybe 9 wins, who knows, maybe even 10 wins. I think the first 2 games could get them some momentum. Minnesota without J.J. McCarthy, with Sam Darnold starting, it's a possible win game. And then against the Commanders, who the Giants have always seemed to own over the years, it's possible the Giants could start out 2-0, and who knows what could go from there. And it's a lot of questions, because last year I thought the Giants were going to be an 11-win team, and then they were a 6-win team. And the year before, I thought they were going to be 4-13, and then they were a 9-win playoff team. So I mean, it's a lot of we'll see, but there's possibility, and I think if the offensive line actually shows that they're fixed for the most part, there's a lot of possibility for the offense, and maybe for even Daniel Jones. But it's a matter of Daniel Jones cutting down the turnovers, cutting down the mistakes, and playing good football that's worthy of the contract that the Giants gave him last offseason.
It's crazy that he made that throw. Obviously the pick six, but I just remember last year against Seattle, the guys open in the end zone, easy touchdown. He throws the pick six. It's just like, man, when is he going to get over this stuff? It's crazy.
That moment, and I must have played that back on social media so many times. He had Darren Waller in the back of the end zone, and I think it was the end of the third quarter, and the Giants. It was a close game. It was I think it was like 10-3, or it was maybe 14-3, but they were within striking distance of getting back into the game, and all Daniel Jones had to do was he was staring down his receiver, which was Paris Campbell, who was right at the goal line, whereas Darren Waller was wide open in the back of the end zone, and you traded for Darren Waller to make the big catches. He could jump up and go get the ball if needed, and instead he threw this little dump off to Paris Campbell, which ended up getting picked six by Devin Weatherspoon, who on the scouting report said he stares down the first guy, and they knew it and they picked it, and it went back for. And I think that was the moment where a lot of Giants fans who had suddenly got on the Daniel Jones side kind of jumped off for good. And, I feel like that's, a lot of those fans are like, oh, well, he fooled me, shame on you, fooled me twice, shame on me. And I don't think they've forgiven Daniel Jones since then. So I think that, Daniel Jones has to go and show like, oh, no, that wasn't me last year. I can be the guy that, was careful and can actually be aggressive and do good things with the football. Almost like his rookie year, when he actually, I feel like when he was kind of a gunslinger and not afraid to, do the dump, he was not being this dump off quarterback. His rookie year, he threw for 24 touchdowns and over 3,000 yards and was willing to go deep. I think if they get him back to that and gets his confidence and, the willingness to throw the ball down the field, there's a lot of possibilities of what Daniel Jones can do. And it does start with the offensive line, but it also starts, he also has to make better decisions with the football and also not turn it over.
What do you think about his contract? Because I always hear two completely different ends of the spectrum saying, option A is that we're getting ripped off. $40 million a year is crazy, although there's an option at the end of this year to get rid of him. So maybe it's not so bad. But then I hear the other side saying that he's basically the same exact player as Trevor Lawrence, but Trevor Lawrence gets $55 million a year. Where do you sit on that? Is his contract crazy or it's not so crazy?
I mean, he's not making the top. Obviously not the Justin Herbert, the Jalen Hurts, the Joe Burrow type of money. I mean, he got paid. He's getting 160 million over, but really they kind of structured it to the where, if they want to cut him after this year, it's a $19 million dead cap hit, and I think they saved 20 million, and they can start fresh again. At the same time, I mean, I thought he would have gotten. I thought he was like 3 for 100, 4 for 120. I thought he was about 30 to 33 million. I thought he would have gotten. So kudos to his agent for getting him in that 40 million average per year mark. I also feel, if because at the same time his contract is 18% of the Giants salary, the cap space, and I mean that's a decent chunk. Whereas, and he's on the salary cap for 47 million for his cap hit. And if you take a look at it, I mean, for 47 million, you can get, and you've got Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Bobby Okereke, and Kayvon Thibodeau, all I think combined are like 48 million. So that just shows you, for 4 key defensive players as opposed to one quarterback, the kind of value and where you can see, like, yeah, I mean, Daniel Jones, but at the same time, it's the market for quarterbacks is just, it's insane. It's robust. And as the salary caps continue to go up each year, it's the next guy is going to get that big money. And pretty soon, we could be looking at 60, 65 million, $70 million quarterbacks. I mean, it's kind of in the middle with Daniel Jones, because he didn't play like a 40 million a year quarterback, but at the same time, yeah, he's not, he's obviously not a 55 million. He's not in the $55 million range, nor were the Giants going to pay him like that, because I think they still want to see if he's worth that money, because they didn't give him a Joe Burrow deal or a Jalen Hurts deal. They gave him kind of almost like the Geno Smith, Jimmy Garoppolo before he got cut, Derek Carr type deal. They gave him a little bit more than that because he was younger than those guys. But at the same time, it was kind of like a 2-year with an escape clause, because we want to see if you're still worth the money we're paying you. And in the first year, it didn't really work out so well. So if Daniel Jones can bounce back, it's like, all right, well, we have another year with him to see what's what. And if not, well, we can make the roster decision. Needs to cut him. We can go. Maybe we can get a temporary, like a cheap vet, and then maybe draft somebody next April. So it's a little bit in the mix, in the middle with Jones's deal. It does take up a lot of space. It could be worse, but Jones also has to go out and show that he deserves and to be a $40 million quarterback. Was he from the 6 games that he was last year? No, but he's likely to be the starter for week 1. So you know what? You erase what happened last year. He's got a fresh start. A lot of people think it's a last chance, but at the same time, it's also a fresh start to kind of erase what happened last year, and to prove and to show everybody that he can be the guy, and somewhat from what 2022, and then maybe evolve into the guy that the Giants were giving that big contract to, and to build and for the future for the team.
What's your record prediction this year for the G-Men?
All right, I'm gonna be reserved. I'm gonna say 7-10 with. Only because I got burned last year, because I said that they were going to be an 11-6 and a playoff team, and maybe even win another one. And although, to be fair, had Graham Gano been healthy, and had the officiating been a little more competent in the Buffalo game, the Giants could have been 9-8 and not 6-11. And we're talking about the Giants being a playoff team. With that said, I'm going to say 7-10 right now. I mean, I'm going to right after the last preseason game, I'm going to, like, I always look at the schedule, and I do the full breakdown and give an actual win-loss prediction for the games. But I'm just going to say 7-10 right now, with a possible ceiling of maybe 10-7. So 7-10 with potential high hopes.
Are you worried about Drew Lock at all? Because obviously we got him because Daniel Jones always gets hurt, and now he's hurt. Are you worried about him and his health?
I mean, before the season, some thought that he could even he could potentially challenge Daniel Jones for his job, and he comes into the first preseason game against the Lions, and he didn't look good. He didn't look like he had really bad throws into the middle of the Lions defense. He didn't really look like a guy that at least the guy that we all saw last year in Seattle leading the game-winning drive against the Eagles, who were, granted, they were falling apart, but the Eagles were still a playoff team last year. And Drew Lock led the game-winning drive and looked very poised doing that on national TV. I mean, he just, I mean, granted, again, it's a preseason game. It's the first game back, but still, like, you know, Drew Lock's a seasoned veteran who just didn't look like a seasoned veteran. So, and of course, you know, Tommy DeVito, while he didn't look like he did anything special against Houston, Tommy DeVito at least looked like he was more competent and knowing of the offense against the Lions in the first preseason game. So, you know, if Drew Lock isn't, I don't know if he's going to play on Saturday, but Tommy DeVito is at least taking the snaps. And if, you know, worst, I mean, Tommy DeVito has a chance to maybe win, you know, the backup job to Daniel Jones. And, you know, we saw last year, you know, Tommy DeVito got to have some playing time with all the injuries, you know, to Daniel Jones, to Tyrod Taylor. You know, DeVito got the experience that most undrafted free agent quarterbacks, you know, don't get. And, you know, he was up and down, but still he got that experience. So if Drew Lock, you know, either it doesn't look good again, if he plays or not against the Jets, or if he's still, you know, his ankle still continuing to give him issues, you know, Tommy DeVito could sneak up in there and take his job. Or what some were thinking, with the added cap space, if a quarterback maybe is going to get released or does get released, you know, maybe the Giants sneak in and, you know, claim somebody off waivers. Because the Giants have the sixth priority for waivers, because it goes based off the draft order. So the Giants, if somebody, you know, waives a quarterback, you know, the Giants could you know, sneak in and if they're, you know, dirt cheap or, you know, affordable, you know, who knows, maybe. And if they're worried about Daniel Jones, you know, health, or just, you know, if he's ineffective, you know, maybe they sneak in and you know, get a quarterback to go in the quarterback room that maybe wasn't on anybody's radar, and all of a sudden who wasn't going to make the roster, and all of a sudden is now his backup. And who knows, you know, by week 8 could potentially be playing if, you know, things happen that like we saw last year.
Would it be crazy to think Daniel Jones gets cut after the season? Let's say, you know, it doesn't go as planned. He gets cut. He's not the right guy. Would it be crazy if they signed Dak Prescott? And what would that deal look like? Would that be a $50+ million a year deal?
I keep hearing the Dak to the Giants. I mean, I think he'll get probably, like, it seems like it's trending like the quarterback. I guess the tiers for the top end quarterbacks. It seems like right now it's at like 50 to 55, and it seems like that's where he's headed. I don't know, for some reason I don't think they would go for Dak, but I think he will get that kind of money. I could see like a team like the Raiders, only because they have, you know, Gardner and O'Connell there on a short term. I could see other teams, but I mean, some people say, well, why not the Giants? And I think, considering the way that they did it in Buffalo with Joe Shane when he was with Brandon Bean, I mean, they drafted Josh Allen. I feel like they like to get their own guys. I just don't think they would sign the big free agent quarterback like getting a Dak. I feel like they would go out, especially if they have like in the top 10, or who knows, even the top 5, if the Giants aren't that good this year. I think they would. The Carson Beck to the Giants thing, it seems to be like one of the more popular ones, but I'm sure there'll be other you know, quarterbacks being mocked to the Giants, and others as we go on with the season. I do think Dak will get probably 50 to 55 million. For some reason, I could see him staying with the Cowboys, just because I think Jerry might cave. But then again, he's been stingy on this whole CeeDee Lamb thing. At the same time, I can see other teams like the Raiders and some others who, you know, could feel like they're a quarterback away and feel like maybe Dak could fit their system and give him the big money. And all of a sudden, you know, Dallas is looking for a quarterback because they've let Dak go. But I for some reason, I like, my gut feeling, I don't see Dak going to the Giants, but I do think he'll get probably 50 to 55 million from, if it's not from the Cowboys, definitely he'll get it from another team.
So if things don't go well this year, obviously, we're looking at a high draft pick again, unfortunately. But you think Carson Becks or Shador Sanders, or who maybe should they get if they're have to get a quarterback for next year?
I mean, I've heard like I've seen like already like right I think the week after the draft, I think they did the pre 2025 and a bunch of them did it. I mean, I think I saw Carson Beck in like three of them. I saw the 33rd teams just they did the Giants having the number one pick, which they haven't had since the 60s, and they for Shador Sanders. I keep hearing these mixed things that like Dion has a certain list for where his son wants to go, and the Giants aren't on it. But who knows if that's actually true or not? I've heard the name, like I've heard Drew Alar. I've heard Jackson Dart. I mean, these are all possibilities. I mean, it really all depends on where the Giants finish this year. Because we saw that the Giants had the sixth pick, and they were interested in, they were interested in Jaden Daniels. They were interested in Drake May, and even when we saw on Hard Knocks, they were also interested in Caleb Williams too. But the first three teams all wanted quarterbacks as well, and they knew that they probably weren't going to get them because of where they were in the draft, and the teams were unwilling to trade with them. So they went with their next best case, which was to go get a big wide receiver. They got the guy they wanted with Mailk Nabers. It all depends, next year, where they finish, where they view the quarterbacks. If they still, if Daniel Jones does get released, where they finish in the draft, and if they like somebody enough to move up to go get somebody, and that's even if they have to move up. It also depends on where they finish in the draft order. So there's a lot. I mean, it's a lot a lot has to happen, but there's also a lot of possibilities because I mean they could also decide to do what Buffalo did a couple years ago, where I think Buffalo finished. I think they started 26th, and they made two trades by the time that the 2018 draft happened, and they moved up to get Josh Allen. So, I mean, that could also be a possible scenario too. Like I said, we're foreshadowing something, that the first season hasn't happened yet, but we all have to play out for the season before the Giants, I guess, make their quarterback decision for 2025 and beyond.
Crazy looking back at some of those drafts. They probably should have both Josh Allens on the team. You know what I mean? Like crazy the way that all worked out.
I mean, the night of the 2019 draft, I mean, the way that it was going, Kyler goes one, Bosa, and then after the Raiders pick, and I think it was Farrell or something, and the Giants are up at 6, and I was convinced that Josh Allen was, because I didn't think it was going to be Daniel Jones. I honestly thought they were going to go get a pass rusher. Eli was still there for another season. But they made the shocking move to take Daniel Jones at 6, and some people still feel it was a mistake. Remains to be seen. I did think it was going to be Josh Allen, and I mean the year before, I always defended the Saquon pick because I mean Sam Darnold hasn't really worked out. They could have had Josh Allen, but I always wonder, would Josh Allen have worked out with the poor line that the New York Giants had in front of Eli that one year, and plus the ones that Daniel Jones has done. I think Josh Allen was in a better scenario in Buffalo where he had better offensive lines and better receivers, and he's had the same coach. So, but you never know. They could have had both Josh Allens, but especially they could have had the quarterback Josh Allen, but I don't know if he would have succeeded like he's done in Buffalo.
When you look at the NFL just as a whole this year, have you dissected every team? Have you looked at possible Super Bowl matchups? Have you thought that far ahead of who could possibly? I know it's way early, but have you looked that far into it of who are the best teams in the AFC, who are the best teams in the NFC?
Oh, of course. I mean, and that's actually somebody asked me who do you think early on, who are the key? And of course, Kansas City looking to be the first team to three-peat. I was thinking actually the one preseason game, the Chiefs and the Lions, and I was like, this was almost a Super Bowl matchup. It had the Lions, kept the lead for the second half, and Kansas City obviously, always looks amazing, and they're always a Super Bowl threat. As long as Joe Burrow is healthy, Cincinnati should be a much better team. Baltimore is always contending, and they got to the AFC Championship game. Just they ran into Mahomes. I think the Jets could be an X factor if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy. Their defense is pretty good. If Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, who knows? Because there's a lot of expectations for that team with Aaron Rodgers there. Because if not, who knows? Aaron Rodgers might bolt or retire. Who knows? The NFC, obviously, the Niners are, really good, really loaded. And if Brock Purdy continues to get better, San Francisco might be back again in the Super Bowl. Obviously, Detroit has a lot of momentum. And like I said, they were half away from getting to the Super Bowl. I think Detroit's getting better. The Packers, with Jordan Love, they were a fourth quarter away from playing Detroit in the NFC Championship game. You always have to count in, the Eagles. You gotta always say the Cowboys, but I always feel like the Cowboys are always a January meltdown away from getting eliminated again. But I feel like those are kind of like your early contenders. I don't know if there's always going to be a surprise team that I felt like the Packers were that surprise team because they were below the seventh seed last year, like in the last couple of weeks in the season, and all of a sudden they snuck in. They beat the Cowboys in the first round, and they almost beat the 49ers in the second round. So, but I feel like right now those are probably your early contenders going into the season.
Yeah, imagine the Chiefs three-peat. Oh man, and they did add like two of the fastest guys, right? They added Hollywood Brown, they drafted Xavier Worthy, so it's like they kind of got their worst position. They really amped it up, so it's possible three-peat, which would be nuts.
That's. It shows like Patrick Mahomes loses, Tyreek Hill, and they go out win a Super Bowl, and they just continue to they plug in these players that just their offense clicks and it works. And yeah, you add in. I know Hollywood Brown was dealing with an injury from the preseason, but Xavier Worthy, that was people were just like, oh, all right, season's over. Chiefs are going to win again when they drafted him. The fastest guy in the combine, and now he's got Patrick Mahomes throwing to him. That has Sports Center moments written all over it. Kansas City, they're such a well-oiled machine. They have so much playoff experience. They know how to win the big games. And what really impressed me about them this past year was they went on the road for a lot of these playoff games that they went on this run, and they went and beat they beat Buffalo in the cold, and then they went and beat Baltimore in the cold. And then they had another 10 plus point deficit in the Super Bowl to the Niners, and they came back and they won and they won in overtime. So Kansas City is not only a good team, but now they're showing they can be resilient in these big games. Yeah, it's hard not to see them potentially being a team that wins 3 in a row because they've done so much. They've added these big time rookies for the guy that everyone feels like is the best quarterback in the game, in Mahomes, and it just seems like they continue to keep better and just keep wanting to build the dynasty that they have made over the last 4 or 5 years. And it seems like it's not going to end anytime soon, which, for the Chiefs side, nor should it, because you want to maximize as much as you can for Patrick Mahomes, and especially with Kelsey, and as long as Andy Reid's still coaching, win as much as you can, because, as you see, the Patriots dynasty ended, and who knows if they'll ever get to that. So, yeah, they should do as much as they can to continue to build on this current dynasty that they've made.
And the defense was tremendous last year. I know they lose Snead this year to the Titans, so that might change it a little bit, but the defense was tremendous last year as well for the Chiefs.
They kept Chris Jones. He seems like he's like the anchor with the pass. I would have been a little worried. It seems like the Chiefs have they've kind of like you've seen some players come and go, but I mean Chris Jones has been an anchor on that line, and they gave him the big time deal. I mean, it seems like defensive end, or I should say defensive tackles and pass rushers have been getting paid lately, and he was the latest one to get his mega deal. I feel like he's been the key for that defense. It seems like they've been drafting well with their guys. So I mean, they did lose Snead, but I feel like they'll figure it out with corners. I feel like they didn't want to lose Chris Jones because he was like their anchor on that defense. I still think that's their division. I still think they're going to win probably 11, 12, maybe 13 games, and I would not be surprised if they're the last team standing again, hoisting up the Lombardi Trophy for a third straight year.
Who are some fantasy football, maybe just some sleeper picks, if you will? I feel like maybe even like Keon Coleman, could he be possible? Like, who are some just fantasy football? Do you do a lot of fantasy football?
Oh, I'm I have my brother-in-law's league. I'm actually the current champion. I
Nice.
mean, so and for you being a WWE guy, I have a WWE style belt that is actually for our league. So I know you
Oh,
appreciate
awesome.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome.
um, I mean, for those, I mean, I feel like Mailk Nabers could be one if Daniel Jones gets him the ball. I mean, I feel like Xavier Worthy is going to be someone people might target because of Mahomes. I think Keon Coleman could be. I mean, I know some people said he was a little iffy during, but I feel like in the preseason, like sometimes like it's kind of like a poker game. Don't show all your stuff until you get. And I feel like Keon Coleman with Josh Allen could be a really a really good combination there with Diggs getting traded to Houston. Yeah, I feel like some of the receivers that like those guys could be, especially like because I mean, especially me covering the Giants, I feel like Neighbors could be the Giants' first 1,000-yard receiver since Odell Beckham, and I feel like Jones was kind of targeting him a lot in the last preseason game, and with Darren Waller retiring, I don't know if Theo Johnson could be what Darren Waller potentially was supposed to be, but I mean they drafted Neighbor 6 for a reason, so I feel like he could really be a really big grab for somebody who I know a lot of people aren't expecting much for the Giants. Just like in 2014, nobody really knew who Odell Beckham Jr. was. And Odell missed the first 4 games of the season, and all of a sudden he became a 1,300-yard receiver. I don't know if Neighbors could be that, but I feel like Neighbors could be the 1,000-yard receiver and be the reason why the Giants picked him with 6. So I would say he would be a potential, a big get as well. I really liked Xavier Legette. I was looking at him in the draft, and I did a lot of my mock drafts. I was looking at him as a possibility, and I think he went to Carolina, and I think he's going to do some good things for them and be a good target for Bryce Young. I think he could be another big get for somebody as well. So those are some of the receivers, and I guess some picks that. But as we've seen in fantasy football, like for instance, I landed Matthew Stafford, who somebody randomly cut in like week 9, and I just like randomly picked him up, and he was one of my big, key additions to me getting the championship in fantasy. So you could land somebody who, all of a sudden, a big player goes down in week 2 or week 3, and you're scouring the waiver wire for somebody. So those are always the key things to look out for as well in fantasy is a player that might have gotten undrafted and all of a sudden could be helping you win your championship.
Yeah, you literally never know. Like Puka Nakua out of nowhere, and obviously now he's going to go super high in fantasy drafts. You never really know who's going to like hit it this year. Williams a few years ago for the Lions. Remember he was scoring all those touchdowns. A year later, he's nothing on the Saints. So yeah, you literally never know sometimes.
I mean, Arian Foster was that one guy, like we're talking maybe like 10, 12 years ago, where Arian Foster wasn't even like on anyone's draft board, and all of a sudden you had to scoop him up in like week 2 because he lit up, he lit it up early on. It's really, I mean, it's kind of like you almost have to like do I guess like if you do like those mock drafts, you almost have to do like two almost mock drafts. It's like the one that you do before the draft and almost like you have to look almost like after the draft, because there could be players that get, like I said, that don't go drafted, but you also have to see who's out there. And if God forbid an injury happens, you might have to scoop up somebody, or just you see somebody who gets a start and all of a sudden they have 3 touchdowns and they're sitting there on the waiver wire, and you're literally scrambling to your phone or your computer to go, is this guy available, and you're fighting everybody else to try to go get him. So it's literally like you're doing like two drafts and almost 2 different scouting things for your fantasy team, because like I said, that Puka Nakua, it could be out there. Because he didn't get drafted, all of a sudden he's lighting up the league, and you're racing to your phone to see if he's available.
When you look at like the landscape of quarterbacks, is there anyone out there? I know that like maybe he's on the rise, or maybe even also on the decline. Because obviously anybody who had Burrow last year, the injury just killed you. But any quarterbacks out there?
I mean, I keep. I guess Derek Carr is an interesting one, because I keep hearing people think he might get traded. I don't know if he will. I don't know why people, because I don't know if just Saints fans are just, but then again, I mean, he's also got the contract too, and people wonder if New Orleans might move off him. Like the Raiders did with him. I guess I would say, because if they don't lead, I guess if they don't get to the playoffs again, maybe he could be on the decline. I don't know. I always like Gardner Minshew. I feel like he's got such a good personality. I feel like he could be on the rise, but then again, he could be someone, if he doesn't, he's on a small short-term contract. So if he doesn't, live up to, doing well for the Raiders, I mean, I like I said, I think the Raiders could be a potential play for Dak Prescott, and I mean that's another one. Dak, I mean, he's in a very much a contract year. He might put up ridiculous stats, depending on what happens. But he could be, I think he could potentially be somebody that could help in fantasy, especially given that he's playing for his next contract. He might be someone that might be worth grabbing, and just in general, because he wants that big money contract in free agency.
Now, where can everybody follow you? I know obviously you used to do Bleacher Report, used to do USA Today, used to do Giants Wire, but now where are you at? Where can everybody find you as far as some football stuff?
So I am currently with Fansided. The site is GMENhq. If you guys want to follow me, I have on social media, my Twitter is the Doug Rush. I'm also on Facebook as well. I post a lot of stuff on Facebook as well. So those are, if you want to check out the writing on Fanside, it's GMENhq. And then if you want to interact with me on social media, on Twitter or X, what are you going to call it these days, at the Doug Rush, and then also on Facebook, Doug Rush as well. So that's where you can find me. If you want to talk Giants football, or also you're a WWE guy. I also talk wrestling as well if you want to.
Now, before we let you go, before we wrap it up here, I got to ask you though, are you still a big wrestling fan? I know you do post a lot, but are you as big of a fan as you used to be as far as wrestling? And what are you into the most, WWE or AEW?
Oh, yes, I'm still into WWE. I mean, I feel like AEW has kind of lost a little bit of the steam for me. I try to follow along with it, but I mean, Monday night for me since night 3 has always been, Monday Night Wrestling night for me. And I do, obviously I do catch SmackDown on Fridays, but oh yeah, and my 10-year-old son, I've gotten him into wrestling too. He loves it just as much as I do. So, we we like to watch the events together. So yeah, I'll still be, 60, 70-year-old guy who's still, watching wrestling, God willing, with, my kids and my grandkids and all that stuff. So, Oh yeah, I always feel like I'll be always a wrestling guy, and I'll be telling my kids the stories of, Hulk Hogan and John Cena, Roman Reigns, and so on, and keeping it going through the family generation. So, oh yeah, I will always, just feel like I was born a wrestling fan. I'll probably, continue it on, with my family. So, oh yeah.
Who's your favorite guy right now? Who's like or who do you think is the best, really, or maybe who do you have the most fun watching now?
Um, oh, I like Cody. I mean, and it's funny too. I have so many Roman Reigns shirts, so I do like Roman. Um, yeah, I really do like Cody. Um, I like the comeback. I like that. And they didn't just give him the belt straight off at WrestleMania 39. They made him work for it. I like that they kind of did that with him. I've always liked Kofi Kingston too. He's always been a favorite of mine as well. So my son actually really likes Braun Strowman. Braun was probably the reason why he got into wrestling to begin with. So he's also up there for me too. But right now, probably Cody's probably number one for me right now.
It feels like WWE is just super hot, but then you saw the Fanatics Fest that took place, and you realize, wow, they're even hotter than regular, NFL, NHL legends or regular NHL and NBA players. I was just like shocked because they're doing great, they're doing hot, they're making more money than ever. But then comparing them to other sports, it's always iffy. But man, I don't know if you saw that or not, but they sold out everything for Fanatics Fest, much more than all the other sports combined.
I did. I mean, it's to me it's crazy, but at the same time, no, it's not, because I mean we saw it with the Attitude Era. I mean wrestling was red hot during the Attitude Era. Stone Cold, The Undertaker, The Rock, Triple H. I mean we saw. I mean during the Monday Night Wars. I mean we saw the ratings go through the roof with how it went from being like that. The PG, not even the PG, like kind of like the golden era of wrestling to like almost like the kind of like the 90s cartoonish stuff that almost killed WWE, then WWF, and then Attitude Era just soared everything through. And I feel like with the PG era, kind of wrestling kind of died down a bit, especially after the Ruthless Aggression era. And now it's kind of like wrestling's gotten more mainstream, with the use of social media and it being on Fox, and next it's going to be on Netflix. I mean, wrestling has gotten like almost to that like Attitude Era feel again, where like everybody's getting into wrestling. I mean, hell, I mean, even Jalen Brunson from the Knicks is like literally live tweeting about how cool it is to get a shout out from Michael Cole on Monday Night Raw. I mean, you're seeing all these big athletes show up. To Raw, to SmackDown. I mean, it's WWE. It's cool to be a wrestling fan again, and it's red hot. And I think people are excited to see what happens, especially with the Bloodline storylines and with the Judgment Day, and people love Cody Rhodes, and now the CM Punk and Drew McIntyre story. It's like, and it feels like with Triple H running the show, it's like I feel like fans see it as, all right, we got some fresh ideas, we have a fresh face running the company, and they're doing all these different great shows all over the world. And it feels like anytime they do the international show, the crowds are insane, whether it's in Germany, France, Puerto Rico, wherever they go. It's like the fans are insane there. So it's like it's a great feel, and it's like fans are hopping back on to, if they weren't wrestling fans before, they are now. And it's like the more people maybe some have jumped off the AEW ship, WWE is just skyrocketing and scorching right now with the popularity and the shows and sellouts of everything. And right now it's WWE is red hot, and it's fun and exciting to watch. And even some of the people who I've heard from who weren't as big on WWE, they're reinvigorated with their fandom for WWE because of how exciting the stories are and how good the shows have been. And lately, the pay-per-view, or premium live events have been good, and the Monday Night Raw has been good, and SmackDown's been good. So, and then they're gonna have special appearances on NXT coming up soon. So it's like people are gonna watch those to see what happens, because the last time they saw NXT with John Cena and The Undertaker, that was a humongous show. So everything right now WWE is doing is working. They're red hot. It's a fun thing to watch, and it's fun to be a wrestling fan.
Man, it just feels like something changed. Obviously, with Vince leaving and Triple H in, I feel like a lot of the fans definitely came back in droves. But just the booking has been a lot better. Roman, very cool that he's back and his feud with the Bloodline. Jacob Fatu is doing an awesome job. Obviously, Cody, Drew, and Punk are killing it. It just feels like everything is kind of on the right path for WWE right now. They really are killing it.
Oh, it just feels like it. Like I said, it's got that attitude era vibes to it, where it's like everything is can't miss. And I mean, like building, like getting new stars like Jacob Fatu. Oh my, like he is going to be he's a star in the making with what he can do. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're getting to a possible like the Bloodline Civil War, and it feels like it's going to be like Bloodline War Games, which is exciting. I love the fact they brought War Games back, and I think that's another great thing they added War Games as a Survivor Series thing. I mean, that just I feel like everybody loves War Games, and it's just the fact the last couple of years they moved it from NXT to Survivor Series, and I feel like it's something people look forward to now, and it just feels like it's like a fresh start, and at the same time like such better quality shows that we're seeing. And we're seeing it, like I guess the proof is in the pudding, and so far WWE is killing it with everything they're doing between Raw, SmackDown, NXT, the events, everything. And even Fanatics Fest, they blew it out of the water, where everybody got all their things got sold out. And the WWE right now is a can't miss thing, and they are reaping the benefits of it. And I think it's gonna only get stronger as they're on Netflix. And then SmackDown goes to USA, and just I feel like the trend is upwards for them right now.
It is crazy when you look at Fanatics Fest, all those names that were there, and they were saying like, "Wow, Cody Rhodes was like the first sellout and like the number one guest," and also it's like, "Wow," but you had Tyson, Hogan, Eli, Peyton, like it's just crazy to think like the wrestler, the champion, the current WWE champion was their number one draw. I love that. I think it's pretty damn amazing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like you said, I think Peyton Manning was probably I think it was Manning or Brady who had like it cost the most to get either meet or get a photo op, and yet I feel like people were more excited to see Rhea Ripley, or to see Bianca Belair, or to see CM Punk. I mean, I was literally scouring people's social media posts, and it looked like people were over the moon to see Hulk Hogan, or to see like Cody Rhodes. And even I mean the entrance thing where people could do their own entrances. People were literally losing their minds to Triple H and Rey Mysterio coming out to do the entrances, and even Drew McIntyre mocking CM Punk. I mean, people were losing their minds over those, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I feel like it was like people were definitely excited to meet Eli, and to meet Peyton Manning, and Tom Brady, and all the legends, like the sports legends. But I feel like the people who stole the show there were the WWE guys, because it just seems like the wrestling fans literally just took over New York City for the weekend, and it's just they all, and not just for the states. I feel like CM Punk was saying people came 5,000 miles from different countries just to meet him. I mean, that's serious dedication and commitment from wrestling fans all around the world to just to meet the people that they see every week. I mean, that shows the dedication and commitment to where wrestling, and particularly where to WWE is right now. And I think WWE knows right now they have a good thing, and they're going to keep it rolling into the future.
When you look at it too, they were showing Tom Brady. He was doing the WWE entrance thing, so he did Hogan's theme, and he's cupping his hand and everything else. So yeah, it seems like even all the sports guys were all like being wrestling fans for the weekend.
I mean, think about it. Every championship in sports now, what do you always say? You always see that legacy championship belt always being given out. I mean, you saw with the Chiefs, the Celtics when they won the NBA Finals, the Florida Panthers, they had the belt at their parade. I mean, it seems like I always feel like on every sports team, there's always a wrestling fan or two or a bunch on every single team. You just got to find them. And it seems like everybody like wants to show off that belt. I mean, WWE was to come up with that. But it's like everybody is a wrestling fan. I mean, and Rob Gronkowski, everybody forgets Rob Gronkowski was a 24/7 champion, and he was doing his own entrance too at the Fanatics Fest I saw as well. But yeah, I feel like everybody deep down was a wrestling fan at some point in their life, and because you always see them show up at events. And I mean, hell, George Kittle even skipped out of a press conference after a game because there was a pay-per-view event and he had tickets and he had to go to it. So I always feel like these athletes are wrestling fans at heart still, or they've gotten back into it and they all love it, and WWE knows it and they love it. So
absolutely great convo here, not only about the Giants, but also snuck in some WWE talk, which I absolutely love. Again, let everybody know where they can find you, where they can follow you too on social media.
Absolutely. So I write for Fansided. So for Fansided, it's GMENhq. And then also on social media, you can find me at Twitter or X, whatever you call it these days. I am at the Doug Rush, and also on Facebook as well, Doug Rush. So if you ever want to talk, Giants football, NFL football, fantasy football, or if you want to talk WWE or wrestling in general, I always welcome those conversations with everybody. So yeah, that's where you can find me at.
All right. Awesome stuff. Doug, thank you so much for all the time tonight. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so glad we got to do this. Yeah, I would love to, invite me back anytime, and we could even do just full on wrestling if you want to, or football as well. I would definitely love to come back. This was a lot of fun tonight. I'm glad to come on and do your show.
Awesome. Yeah, we got maybe come back. We'll do maybe even quarter season, mid season, whatever. We'll do that and do a little wrestling. See where WWE is at that point as well.
I'm excited already. Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait.